What's going on, everyone? I hope that you are well. But I finished watching an awesome episode from Little House on the Prairie, which is my personal favorite show of all time. The name of the episode is called The Family Tree. But before I dive into that episode, before I share with you guys my thoughts about that episode that I saw, I want to provide some background about the main character in that episode. This is a guy who I left out from my Little House review, and I can't believe that totally forgot about him. You know, he's such an awesome character. His name is Albert Ingalls. He's the type of guy that will end up in certain situations, and he will do whatever it takes. He will come up with things to get himself out of those circumstances. He's that type, but the way he does it, he does it real slick, you see. And by the time I'm done with this video, you're going to be in agreement with me. You're going to say, yeah, preacher man, I know what you was talking about in the beginning of this video. Yeah, he is pretty slick. So anyway, this character, Albert, was introduced in the show in season 5. He ran away from the orphanage that he was in due to the way they mistreated him. So he decided to run to the city of Winoka. And while he was there, he was, making ends meet by shining shoes and doing other things. And during that time, Charles and his family was going through some really bad financial times. And at that time, his daughter, Mary, was blind. And she lost her sight. And she ultimately ended up becoming a teacher for the blind school in Winoka. So Charles said to his family, he said, listen, we are not doing good over here in Walnut Grove. I'm not making any money. I think it's best for us to pack our bags, move to the city of Winoka so that we could be close to Mary, and at the same time I can get a job and provide for us. Caroline already knew that Charles is not a fan of the city. And I could relate to Charles because I'm not a fan of New York City. I prefer to be somewhere else in a nice, quiet area, in a small community. But anyway, this video is about this episode, this show, not about me. But going back to what I was saying, Charles can't stand the city, but his wife already knew that. And Charles told his wife, he said, listen, yes, I don't like the city, but I'm going to do what I got to do to make sure that my family is taken care of. So they decided to move to Winoka, and they went through some stuff over there, Charles and his wife ended up working for this guy who ran most of the establishments over there in Winoka. And during that time, that's when they met Albert. So to make a long story short, before I dive into my thoughts about the Family Tree episode, basically, Charles came to the conclusion that, you know what, the city life is not for me. And we need to just head back home. And before they went back home, they reached out to Albert because they started to connect with Albert. They started to love Albert. And when Charles spoke to him privately and he said, hey, listen, we feel that you are one of us. You are a member of my family, and I want you to come back to Walnut Grove with us. And he definitely agreed because, Albert had no family. He was living in that orphanage and he just hated being there. So he said, sure, definitely, I'll live with you. So anyway, they moved back to Walnut Grove, and now I'm about to connect what I just shared with you with this episode, The Family Tree. Fast forwarding to now, to the episode, Albert and Laura was at school, and the teacher during that scene was telling the students that they have to complete this school assignment called the Family Tree before the end of the month. So at that moment, the camera just zoomed right into Albert's face. He had this disturbed look on his face because he started to get flashbacks about the mistreatment, the way they treated him in that orphanage. So later on in the episode, there was one scene that he was having a bad dream and he was thinking about those awful moments being over there in that orphanage. And Charles started to notice a difference in his behavior. So he decided to speak to him in his barn because, what's his name? Albert, he was already there. And Albert said to Charles, he said, listen, I know that we agreed before that you could call me son and I can call you pa, but that's not good enough because I feel that you need to adopt me so that it could be, legal. He wanted that stamp of approval officially on paper. And Charles told Albert, he said, you know what, I understand that. I get that. I should have done that in the first place. As I'm telling you about that scene, I have to bring up this other scene before I continue. Before that scene took place, there was a scene that they were in front of the school, Albert and Laura, and they was talking about the school project, and then here comes Nellie Olson. And those of you, though, even if you're not a fan of this show, you have heard of Nellie Olson. She is a conniving, awful character. But you need characters like that in the show. That's what I said about her mother in my Little House review. That you need that balance. A show with just good people only, it's not going to be interesting. You got to have that balance to make the show interesting, in my opinion. So anyway, Nellie Olson approached Laura and Albert, and then she looked at Albert and said, how can you expect to get an A+ in this school project, this family tree thing? You don't even know where you came from. You see, that's that type of character. If you never heard of her, that right there is an inch of her personality. She is such a mean person. So Albert didn't like that, so he decided to get up and run off. And then that's when he had the conversation with Paul. So let me fast forward a little bit. They went to the courthouse, right? Charles, Albert, and Caroline, to speak to the judge just to find out for sure if it's possible for Albert to be adopted. And the judge said, no problem, but I need to contact that orphanage just to see if there is a way to connect with anyone who can possibly be a blood relative to Albert. So, they were like, okay, no problem. Charles, Albert, and Caroline, they were sitting at the courthouse, and they thought that the procedure was going to go nice and smooth, but things didn't go that way, guys, because the next day the judge called. No, actually, the next day the judge sent a letter to Charles saying that they found the father, his biological father, and Charles wasn't happy about that. So Charles went back to the courthouse and he had a conversation with the father, and it wasn't a pleasant discussion because the father spoke to Charles and told him, listen, I don't care about my son, really. That's what he was saying in a nutshell. I really don't care about him. All I care about if he's strong. Tell me, is he strong? Because I'm alone at my farm and I need help. And that's why I'm here, to get my son and bring him back to my farm. And Charles, he got upset. He looked at the real father and he said, really? Is that all you don't really care about your son? I mean, he's doing great in school. Charles was telling him about all these good aspects about Albert, but his father kept telling him, I don't care about that. As a matter of fact, this discussion is over. And then he walked away from the courthouse, and then the judge looked at Charles and said, listen, he has the law on his side. And then Charles went back home, spoke privately to Caroline in the barn, not realizing that Albert was nearby, overhearing the conversation. And then that's when Albert broke out and went fishing. And then Charles caught up with Albert, and then he spoke to Albert. He said, listen, the judge told me that they found your father. This is good news. And he's looking forward to seeing you, meeting you, and he wants to bring you back home. The way Charles was talking to him, he was just trying to make that situation pleasant for Albert. Charles didn't know that Albert already knew. And he was just trying to ease Albert into that situation. And after that, the next day, Charles took Albert back to the courthouse, and the judge spoke to Charles, and he said, listen, the real dad is upstairs in the courtroom, but before we proceed, I need you to fill out these legal documents. And at that moment, that is when Albert turned to his father, Charles, and said, listen, can I speak to him privately? Can I see him first before, we all go into the courtroom? And Charles said, are you sure? And at that moment, that's when I knew. I said, yeah, Albert is up to something. So Albert went upstairs, entered the courtroom, and from a distance, he saw his biological father facing the window and looking outside, right? Not realizing that Albert was in the room. And when he turned around, his father, he looked at Albert and he said, hey, boy, come over here so that I can take a good look at you. And then Albert did this. Father? Where are you, Father? You know what he did? He pulled out the blind card on his father. He pretended to be blind just to discourage his father, just to make him change his mind. And immediately his father looked at Albert and said, to himself, he had this look. And then he told Albert, he said, you know what, boy? I truly thought that things are going to work out between us. But I can see right now that the Ingalls truly love you. I can see that they took good care of you. And I think that it's best for you to go back home with the Ingalls. I think that's the best decision right now. And you see how cold-hearted some people can be? And as he was walking out from the courtroom, Albert stopped him and he said, Father, before you go, can you give me a kiss? And I believe that he did that just to see if his father had some love for him. But he had zero love for him because he embraced him in a way that was just so fake, so phony. And then he gave him a little peck, and then he walked away. He went back downstairs. He spoke to Charles and the judge, and he said, listen, I have a change of mind, a change of heart. I decided that the boy can go back home with you. Charles and the judge looked at each other. Really? And then the father said, listen, before I go, is there any legal papers that I need to sign? And the judge said, yes, you need to fill out this form of consent, right? And when the judge said that to the father, Charles looked at the father and said, listen, how will I know that you're not going to come back for Albert? Maybe you might change your mind. Maybe you might put me through this unfortunate situation again. How can I be so sure? And the father looked at Charles and said, listen, just like my son, you ain't going to never see me again. And then he walked out of the courtroom. And when he said that, he was referring to Albert being blind, but he wasn't blind. He was pretending. So Charles rushed into the courtroom upstairs, gave Albert a big hug, and then they went back home to Walnut Grove, and the rest of the family just greeted them with big hugs and kisses. It was such an awesome episode. And it goes to show that there are some people out here in this world, not some, but there are many people who are, they are only concerned about themselves and themselves only. So it is what it is. I hope that you enjoyed this video. It was entertaining for me, and I love this show to death. And in the future, hopefully, if the Lord is willing, I'm going to come out with many more review videos about other episodes from my favorite show of all time, Little House on the Prairie. This is the Preacher Man signing out. May the Lord Yeshua Mashiach bless you all and your loved ones. And in Christ's holy name, I say, Amen. Peace.